Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I'm Shade Curry, your host, and I have a special guest here today, Cassandra Solano, and she's here to tell us her divorce and remarriage story as well. Cassandra is a former therapist and relationship coach. She helps women decide to stay or go, but I know you do like just whatever range of challenges come up in that, in that whole scenario, you work on that too. So welcome, Cassandra. Please introduce yourself. Tell people who you are, what you do.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, I'm Cassandra. I am here on occupied Tongva land, which is now known as North Orange County, California. I'm a clinician of, 17 years now. And I've worked in a lot of different settings with a lot of different kind of people over the years, but currently based off partly my own life experience of really struggling with toxic relationships for most of my life, 20 years, and doing a lot of healing and growth, really focus on helping people have conscious, healthy relationships. So, yeah, like you said, a lot of people come to work with me feeling really stuck in their relationships or in a cycle of relationships, not sure if they should stay or go. So I have 3 kids and a bonus kid, and I'm in my second marriage with a wonderful person. And that's a little bit about us.
Awesome. Yeah. So tell us how you met so after your divorce, tell us kind of what your journey was like that led you to meeting your husband.
Okay, so after my divorce, I felt pretty ready to jump into dating. I think I had made up my decision that I was going to leave my ex-husband um years before I left, and I think I was emotionally already like out of that relationship for a while. I had tried everything and unfortunately he just wasn't willing to put in the work and meet me halfway. Um so I felt in on one way like really ready to jump into dating. And what I didn't realize at the time is that I also had experienced a lot of, I knew I had experienced a lot of emotional and psychological abuse in that first marriage, but I really didn't understand the extent of the impact on me and on my subconscious, on my nervous system, on how I was still filtering and picking and making decisions of who to date and not date. I just thought, well, I'm over that relationship, so that must mean I'm ready to date. So early on, I just did some casual dating, and then I met somebody who was really nice, and it didn't get too serious, but from what I could see, it seemed like he was really involved with his son and a really hands-on parent, which was very attractive to me because that wasn't something that I really saw with my ex-husband. But he got really busy. He worked full time and he started his MBA. And I have a master's degree and know how busy going to school and working and having a kid is.
Yeah.
And he said that, oh no, I've got this. I can do work-life balance. And I said, okay. And then within the first month, he got so busy, I hardly saw him. And a friend pointed out to me, you just got out of a marriage where you weren't the priority. Why are you going to get back into another relationship where you're not? Right. So I was like, oh, okay. So I'm really grateful for that feedback because in some way I still hadn't, even though I had gone to therapy and had been getting support leading up to my divorce, there was still more layers of stuff there.
Right. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that impact? Because I see this a lot with my clients, and I think, similar to myself before, healing and doing this work, if you'd asked me in my 30s how I was doing based on like everything I'd experienced in my childhood and everything I was experiencing in my marriage, I would have told you I was fine. Like the understanding of the impact of psychological abuse or emotional abuse just was not something that I had any idea about. Can you talk about just kind of like how immense the impact can be and how good we are at minimizing it.
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind is that so much of the dominant parenting paradigm, like in the West, is,
Mhm.
and I can speak to the United States where I was raised, is very authoritarian.
Mm,
Um, and I know there are in recent years people advocating for gentle parenting or attachment parenting. There's a lot more awareness around this, but I was raised in the 80s and it was still very do as I say because I said so. Stop
mm,
crying. I'm going to give you something to cry about if you don't stop crying.
mhm,
Girls aren't allowed to get angry, all these things. So it was the whole paradigm of how so many of us are raised in itself is emotionally impactful, even emotionally traumatic, because it disconnects us so much from
mm,
our truth and our perception, our feelings, our experience. We are, you know, subjugated in or through fear into obedience and compliance,
mm,
rather than it being a collaborative parent child experience or done through gentleness and love. So this is something that I think is overlooked a lot because people can look at their childhoods and say, well, I had a nice home. My parents took us on vacation and I had
mhm.
piano lessons. So, I must have had a great childhood. And
Right.
just so much, even in how the dominant parenting culture is set up, is really harmful. Um,
Mhm. And it raises
yeah.
the tolerance for neglect. So
Hmm.
there's almost like it's this two-pronged thing: what's happening in the parent-child relationship that's harmful, and then what's not happening, right? What you're missing. So if your parents did not make you as a child a priority, then it's easy to tolerate not being the priority with your partner. You don't even notice that it's happening because you're so accustomed to it.
100%. And that's exactly what happened in that brief dating relationship I had, um, with, I call him nice dad, is that, when he started to see me less and less, I just was like, well, I have to understand. And he's a busy person and he's trying to better his life. And,
Mhm.
maybe if we had been together for a while and there was already that commitment and that, um, on both ends, right? That like this is an investment and a sacrifice we're both making for like our future for the long term. But I had only been
Mhm.
seeing this person a month when
Mhm.
he started
Yeah.
his graduate program. Um, and that commitment and that, okay, we're both going to make this sacrifice like for some future together. It just wasn't there because the relationship was too new.
Yeah. And it's
Mhm.
interesting that, someone quote unquote dating you would ask that of a new relationship. I
Mhm.
hear that scenario in one form or another from my clients, and they don't want to break it off with that person because they're like, well, he's trying. He has all these things on his hands and all these things on his plate. And my question is always, well, is he available to date? Why is he on a dating app? Like, if he's not available to take grown women out on real dates and spend time getting to know them and showing up for them because he's looking for a long-term relationship, why is he on the app? Like, I'm not knocking what's going on in his life, but why is he here? And then I also ask them to think about what are they showing up for? Like, if you're looking for a relationship that is fulfilling, is that the experience that you're having? And if it isn't, you should make a choice.
Oh my gosh, those are such powerful reflection questions, and it's painful. We don't wanna look at the truth
We don't.
sometimes, right? That, okay, this person is saying one thing, but their actions are showing something very different. And I hung on to that when he said, no, it's going to be work-life balance and I'm still going to see you. And even as he was seeing me less and less, he continued to say it, right?
Mm.
And I was like taking the bait, just, or the carrot on the stick to keep me on the hook, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Why do we, and I don't know, this couples, and I'm sure, and I know I've done it too. Why do we listen to words versus actions? Like, what is this? Is this something broken in our brains? Like, what's happening here?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to past relationships or childhood experiences, um,
Mm-hmm.
where, we had adults and caregivers tell us, well, that's not what I meant. That's not what I said. And their actions and their words were very incongruent. I promise I'm going to show up for you for this thing this time. Oh, I got too busy. I couldn't show up. So when we have this experience of, um, well, I still love them even though they didn't follow through. I still love them even though they broke promises. I still love them even though they say that they're not drinking again, but I can smell alcohol, or I know mom is drunk again, right? And
Yeah.
it's like we've been almost gaslit as children to, again,
Mm-hmm.
like distrust our own intuition, our own, what we see, what we feel, what we smell, like what we
Yeah.
actually experience, and override that to hang on to what they said, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so good. That's so good. All right. So back to your story. What happened next in your dating journey?
So what happened next is that I was, okay, I'm going to be single and do my thing. And then I went to a friend's kid's birthday party and I met a single dad there who was there with his kids. And we started to chat. And the relationship took off pretty quickly, which again should have been a red flag.
Mm-hmm.
um, but it seemed like everything was so ideal, and he had his kids, I had my kids. And what happened was he, again, another thing to look out for, his roommate was moving out with his girlfriend and he was looking for a place to stay. I had a place, but
Mm.
he said, hey, um, you have good credit and between the both of us, we have really good income. Why don't we like get a place together?
How
And
long after
everyone was
meeting him was this?
this was about 6 months.
Okay.
So about 6 months in. And I had people around me that were concerned, but I felt like, no, this is somebody who is really emotionally available and he is so hands-on with his kids. This is going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
And when we moved in together, it was like the mask fell off.
Mm-hmm.
And he became more emotionally distant, like pretty quickly on the weekends when he had his kids. I was taking care of his kids and my kids.
Mm-hmm.
But what was different this time was that I recognized it pretty quickly, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh crap, I'm in this same situation again, like or
Yeah.
similar with my ex-husband. And I went back into therapy and I started speaking up and saying, hey, we need to talk. I don't feel like things are going well. What's going on? And it was always, I promise, like, I'm not leaving. I promise we're
Mm.
good. You'd have to like hit my kids for me to leave you. Like, I'm not leaving. And, again,
Mm-hmm.
lots of words, right? Where the actions weren't matching. So we lived together. This was about 4 months in, and I realized I'm going to have to leave. Like, this is not,
Right.
what it is. And I felt so much shame and regret and felt so bad for my kids who had grown an attachment to his kids and
Mm-hmm.
embarrassed and like I should have known better by now. And, when that relationship ended, I learned so much about um something called like narcissistic abuse and really
Right.
and got into therapy with a person that was really
Yeah.
really um skilled in working with that and especially around childhood wounds connected to that. And I that relationship, because my eyes were so much more open though during the whole process as everything was happening, it gave me a lot of material to work with in my healing journey. Because in my
Right.
first marriage, I think I was so disassociated and disconnected and just in a fog of trying to survive and climb the corporate
Mm-hmm.
ladder and raise 3 little ones. But in this last relationship, it was what I would consider like a transitional relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't as bad as my first marriage, but it wasn't yet what I knew I wanted and deserved.
Right.
And it gave me a
Right.
lot of lessons to learn.
Yeah. Do you
So
think the fact that you met him in person, like at a friend's house, do you think that lowered your guard?
it did. And he had this, we had a lot of mutuals, and even one that's really, really close to me. And he came like highly recommended.
Yeah. Yes. And
Right.
I wanted to highlight that because I work with women who are dating on apps and women who are dating offline, in-person networking or both, right? Like whatever combination works for the individual. And it's one of the things I've noticed when a person meets someone else in person or through a friend, they tend to want to skip the gates and milestones that I recommend we work through. And I'm like, oh, no, no, no. I know he's your aunt's son's best friend. Or I know you went to elementary school with him. I know you went to high school with him, but you have to take all of those external characteristics do not define who the person is on the inside.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're
Yeah,
narcissists
I can really
everywhere.
see where like I didn't do the filtering, and that I was doing with people I was meeting online there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Mm.
how did you come out of that healing stage? So like you were like, okay, I see it now. I'm working on the things. When you were kind of done and moving through that healing process, what was different about you?
I think what was different was that I really started working on my trauma and my connection with my body, my connection with my intuition and trusting myself. Um, I felt so much more empowered and alert and present, um, that I was like able to. So when I met my husband, months after this, I was so clear, so present, paying attention to my body. Like, how am I
Mhm.
feeling? Looking for those red flags that I could, name, asking a lot of questions, like right out the
Yeah.
gate.
What was that
And
like asking a lot of questions? Did you have
yeah,
any discomfort doing that?
um, I didn't, because I felt so like I am done wasting my time.
Mm-hmm.
And, I didn't come in hard or aggressively right away. It was, after I think our second date when we were like, okay, yeah, we'd like to see where this could go. And I
Mm-hmm.
asked him that question, like, what are you really looking for? Like, what's your intentions here?
Mm-hmm.
And then it was probably the third time we hung out that I was, so tell me about your mom, tell me about your dad. What's your relationship like with her? What was your relationship like with your mom growing up? Tell me
Yeah.
about your friends. What are those relationships like? Right. And yeah, just and he's like, are you interviewing me? I'm like, yeah, a little bit.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Right. Because I think a lot of women don't want the man to feel like they're interviewing them. Like I don't
Mhm.
want him to feel bad. I don't want him to feel the discomfort of this question that I'm asking. I don't want him to feel the discomfort of me bringing up porn use. Is that something that you use? Right. And so we're so busy trying to make the man comfortable that we create so much discomfort for ourselves in our own lives, where there are questions that are unanswered,
Mhm.
where there are red flags that we miss because we don't want him to feel uncomfortable.
Absolutely. And that's something to look at, right? Is if there's something that I'm afraid to bring up to somebody that
Mm-hmm.
I'm dating or even in a relationship with, um, why? Why am I so uncomfortable to bring it up? What am I
Yeah.
worried will happen? And if they're gonna get upset about it or break up with me over it, is that really a safe person or a person
Right.
that I should be giving my time to at the
Yeah.
end of the day?
100%. 100%. All right. So now we want to hear the good the exciting part of the story. How did you meet your husband?
So we actually met through like mutuals as
Mhm.
well. I kind of moved back into the area that I originally was from, and we started to cross paths again. And um, it was just friendly chit chat the first couple times we saw each other. And then he would always see me in gym clothes. I was going to the gym a lot at the time. And just as a friendly thing, he's like, "Oh, want to work out together?" I said, "Sure." And so we went to the gym and
Oh wait,
we're
I'm just I'm
chatting.
just I'm
Uh-huh.
just giggling at the thought that you were like, oh, it's just a friendly thing.
Yeah. I was like, okay,
I'm
whatever.
very suspicious of this friendliness.
Yeah. I wasn't, I mean, I thought he was handsome, but I wasn't like thinking, okay, I'm ready for anything right now or looking for
Yeah.
anything, right? I was like just totally having my little glow up, getting in shape,
Hmm.
focusing on me, got me and my kids a cute little house to rent, and was
Yeah.
like kind of resetting everything. Um, yeah, so we went to the gym. I kicked his butt there, and then he officially asked me on like a date.
Yeah.
After that, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's
um,
so, I mean, that's
mhm,
like he asked.
mhm.
He came in your orbit and was like, "Hey, can I come to the gym? Can we hang
Yeah,
out? And can I take you out?"
yeah, and I really wanted to feel like I was being pursued and
Hmm.
somebody was putting in the effort to come for me. Like I am the prize, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so he did that. And yeah, and then we started dating and seeing each other when my kids were at their dad's house, or he'd even go out of his way in the evening after I would put my kids to bed, and he'd come by and we'd sit and talk on my front porch and
Hmm.
even though it was late at night, just to connect. And I always felt like he um made me the priority, and I was the priority, um always. And he worked with his ex-girlfriend, which, when she found out he had moved on, she caused a little bit of drama at work for him, which was
Hmm.
unfortunate. So yeah, don't date where you work.
Or
But
do,
yeah,
who knows?
I
Plenty of
know.
people meet their spouses at work. It's like whatever
That's true.
happens, you can
That's
handle
true.
it. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, just handle it like if you know it's not gonna work out, right? Like have a plan. And she was not the most emotionally mature person. So I'll say that
Hmm.
too.
Yeah. People like that, it
Um,
doesn't matter where you are. Like
yeah,
they're gonna do
yeah,
something.
that's true. So she besides that, like, I mean, I always felt like wanted and
Hmm.
prioritized and listened to.
What's the
Yeah.
difference between being pursued, being wanted, being prioritized, and being love bombed?
Mm,
Especially because
mhm,
I know you talked about the narcissistic relationship.
mhm.
Sometimes it can be, I don't think it's hard to tell the difference, but a person who hasn't gone through that healing process can find it hard to tell the difference.
Yeah. So when I think of love bombing, there's a couple of things. One is like this unearned um like regard or feelings of love. So it's like, oh, we just met, but I've never felt like I
Mm.
feel with you with anybody before. And it's like our first date, or it's like our second date. Like, I think I'm in love with you, or I can see myself marrying you one day,
Mm.
right? These kinds of like big statements of like emotions or big promises when there's not
Mhm.
even really like the time and the experience has been put in. um
Mhm.
so it's just like very fast, right? Kind of. And we can definitely feel those ways or have those thoughts. I mean, I definitely wasn't dating anybody that I couldn't see myself like spending a long time with, right? I wasn't dating just to date, but to kind of
Mhm.
make these professions of love. Um,
Yeah.
that's something to be mindful for. Um, and again, where they are pushing the relationship to move faster than maybe you want to or are ready to. So, like with the relationship before my husband, I wasn't thinking we were going to move in together anytime soon, but he needed a place to live. And he
Right.
was like pushing me, pushing me, pushing me, like, let's get a place together. And even though I felt uncomfortable about it, um, this part of me felt like, well, I needed to rescue him or to save him from his
Mm-hmm.
problem. And so I'm going to put aside what I'm comfortable with or my timeline or my boundaries to like, go along with what he's pushing me to feel like I need to do,
Yeah.
or want to do. Yeah.
So with your current husband, it sounds like being pursued looked like him making efforts. He just
Mhm.
continued, he wasn't pushing you, he wasn't, putting pressure on you, but he just kept making efforts to see you, kept making
Mhm.
efforts to have conversations and,
Mhm.
moving the relationship forward.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
He, me being the one with 3 kids, and he has a kiddo, but she spends most of her time with her mom in another state, and then we get her on holidays and summertime.
Okay.
Um, me being the one with 3 kids, he really let me set the tone and the speed for everything. And because of my healing, I learned how to slow down and to trust that if
Mm-hmm.
this is the one for me, like he's going to be okay with me taking the time I need to take to really feel safe and to really feel sure
Yeah.
before bringing him into my kid's life or us moving in together, anything like that.
Yeah. That's amazing. So now
Yeah.
you've been married 4 years.
Mhm.
What has that been like?
It has been the best experience of my life. I, yeah, like this relationship is like everything I hoped and dreamed for, and like why I blew up my life when I left my first marriage. Because I hoped that I could have something like this, and it just made all of that so worth it. And, it hasn't been all like strawberries and orgasms, as they say. um, there have definitely been a lot of really hard conversations, especially in the first, I would say, year and a half together.
Mhm.
Well, first there's the honeymoon phase, which like we all know and love. And then is like the phase where all of our past wounds start coming up to be healed in the relationship, our
Mhm.
attachment wounds. And
Mhm.
there were like some really pretty big um, arguments, hurt feelings, hard conversations, but we both came in with a skill set of being able to articulate what we were thinking and feeling and
Mm.
say what we need and be respectful to each other, even when we were upset with each other, allow each other to take space when needed, and
Mhm.
to always come back when we were ready and hash it out. Um, and have like the skills to do that. It didn't mean we were both perfect at it all the
Mhm.
time. But at the end of the day, there was that foundation of respect and communication skills and commitment. Um, and my husband has also done some like therapy and, past work and reflection on his past traumas, which he also is a
Mhm.
survivor of several different kinds of trauma in his childhood. um, so, had some sense of like, okay, yeah, because my mom was an addict, like, and I always felt like I wasn't a priority. When I, Cassandra, like, don't kind of let him know, like, if I'm gonna go do something with friends and I let him know at the
Mm.
last minute, it can really trigger that not feeling like a priority in him,
Yeah.
right? So we had to learn about each other and uncover layers. And so much of this doesn't happen until like the thing is being triggered, until you're in the
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're like, oh my gosh, what's this about? Oh, it's another childhood wound coming up for healing.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I love Harville and Helen Hendricks. I'm not sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Helen. Yeah. So
Yes.
we I love her work, their work, because they talk about imago relationships
Mhm.
and really opening ourselves up to help our partners heal from their own childhood wounds. And I love their work. My husband and I, we've taken their classes and have their books, and we try to do their scripts. It's hilarious if you watch us. We're like, oh my God. But we keep doing the work and we keep practicing and incorporating it. Um, I wanted to bring that up because that work is healthy and appropriate within that marriage relationship, like within your committed relationship situation. I have encountered women who are trying to do what you described 6 weeks into meeting someone. Right? Like, oh, well, he had this trauma and he's going through all of this in his divorce. And, he wants to be with me. So I'm going to try to be there for him in this way. Can you just talk about how to appropriately view that situation versus your situation?
Yeah. So kind of like the first example I gave when I was dating like the nice dad. It's like he wanted me to make this level of commitment of I'm going to stay committed to just dating you even though I only see you for an hour a week because you're so busy. And so there was this expectation that I put in this like big commitment for like not a lot of return, or I put
Mm,
in this big commitment when the actual container of a committed relationship that is safe and secure wasn't established yet. Right.
yeah.
So it's like, I don't know, somebody asking you to invest in something without them like having a business plan or um like a strategy and you even really knowing what you're investing in, but they're just like, give me $10,000 and
Yeah.
you're going to make money back in this project I'm working on. Right.
Yeah.
It's like,
Just for the
no.
joy of doing that, just for the joy of having your name,
Yeah.
your name mentioned in the meeting. Give me
Yeah.
$10,000.
Yeah. It's like, no, it's a form of settling, really, right? It's like I'm going to put in all this emotional labor for like what in return right now. And if you're getting into each other's like, oh, I gotta help heal their trauma, like do these things at like 6 weeks, I mean, ugh, like that is a red flag. That's the time of like getting to know each other and when things should
Mm-hmm.
be
It
fun.
should
And
be fun.
yeah,
Yes. If
yeah,
it's not fun, rethink.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Like, and I
it's
love
just
how
gonna get
you
worse.
I love how you described having a container because now you and your husband are committed, you're married, their safety has been established, trust has been established, commitment has been established. And so that is a safe place to start to open up to someone to say, hey, this happened to me in my childhood. This is the work I've done on it. This is how it impacts me. I want you to know that so that you know this part of me. Like that's a really valuable part of our hearts. And it's not, that's not information to lay out at the second date.
Yes. Yes. And that's something that, I talk about a lot. It's um being intentional with what we share and when we share it and with whom. Because if you have a childhood wound like mine, where um, my inner child is so desperate to be seen and to be heard and to be loved. I was an oversharer. I would
Mm,
share way too much, way too soon from this unmet need
mm,
to be known. And it would repel like potential healthy partners that are like, oh my gosh, this person has like a lot of baggage.
yeah.
And then the people that would stay either were also like equally in their wounds or
Mhm.
someone looking to take advantage potentially of someone. They're like, oh, this is a wounded bird,
Yeah.
that I'll be able to control or
Mhm.
whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just, there, I mean, I don't say there's like X number of dates or X number of weeks to start sharing our more intimate information with, but I think there's definitely some markers around like, is there a secure, safe container here before I really start opening up and sharing those parts of me? Because, our stories are a privilege for someone to
Mhm.
hear. And we also want to make sure there's reciprocity in that sharing too.
Yes, 100%. I always ask my clients to develop their own gates, like based on where you are and when you got divorced and how much work you've done, I'll have them create like 6 to 8 gates, right? And they move through those gates at their own speed. It's different for every woman, but just putting their brain through that process lets them know, oh, well, I do need to be thinking about these things. I do need to think about when I want to have him meet my children. I do need to think about it and not just let it happen randomly or unintentionally with unintended consequences.
Yeah, yeah, and I definitely did that too. So I get it. Right,
Yeah.
right.
So now that you guys are where you are, does your family have what's next for you? Like what's the next big adventure, or what's on you guys' dream board or vision board?
Oh, I love that question. Well, currently my bonus kid is debating, excuse me, whether or not she wants to come actually stay with us full time or stay with her mom. She's an only child over there, and here, her and my oldest daughter are 4 months apart, and they're just the best of friends. So we'll see in the next school year if we become a family of 6 full time.
Mhm.
And we are looking to hopefully buy a home. I know the housing market is like
Yeah.
really intense,
It is
really
intense is
intense,
the
right?
word right now.
Yeah, yeah, but that's on our a goal of ours, and that's something too that is a little tricky because my kids do see their dad, um and we may have to buy a home out of the area where I live is really
Mm,
expensive. And so that's a whole thing to work through too. I've already kind of been dropping some little like, seeds of, hey, we're looking to buy a house. Hey, we might have to move out of the area. That might change how
mhm,
visitation looks, right? Because when you have shared custody and the other parent is really anchored into a community,
mhm.
um, that's a whole other thing that needs to be navigated through.
Yeah. And I've
Yeah.
heard that, I mean, I've only been married 3 years
Mhm.
now. And so what I've heard is that, hey, it's gonna take you like 7 years to blend to blend everyone, whatever that's going to look like, where everything just kind of finally settles to where it's gonna be. And
Mhm.
the new normal is like fully established. And I think that's probably close to the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also there's such little like writing out there actually about um there is some about step parenting or blended families. And a lot of it, and again, there's nothing wrong with this, but from what I found is very like written by pastors or like very
Mm,
Christian. But there's not a lot I've seen out there published that's really like a research, and
yeah.
around blended families and step parenting and best practices for step parenting. It's really interesting that there's such a lack of information on that. Um,
Yeah, that is interesting because I mean, what a hotbed for like attachment challenges, right?
yeah.
You have this traumatic thing that happened, like divorces happen potentially on both sides, and all of
Mhm.
those ones, not counting the childhood stuff. And then you bring
Mhm.
all these people together, adults and children. We
Yeah.
need to like have some kind of plan. Like, yeah, yeah, so
Yeah,
true.
there's so many layers there. And from what I've read, it also kind of depends on how old like the kids are when the
Mhm.
families come together too. That also is going to change a lot of the approach in step parenting and how things blend together or don't, if
Yeah.
they're younger versus if they're already teens.
Yeah, no,
So yeah.
definitely. Another thing that we should think about intentionally just after divorce, and I think there's a lot of assumptions in the culture around divorce, around post-divorce healing and dating, and of course that probably just translates right into blending families and step parenting. Is that we just assume we know what we're doing when it comes to relationships, like we still don't have classes in high school for this. Like at least now we have financial classes, even though they're not great, but at least they have them. We still don't have a class for like, hey, by the way, you might need to know how to pick a spouse.
Yeah, I really think like something like attachment theory is something that a ninth grader in their freshman health class could wrap their heads around, right?
Well, they're experiencing
Yeah.
it. It would be
Yeah.
helpful just to explain why in the world do I hate my family so much right now? Yeah, I totally agree with you. Cassandra, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your story with us today. I really want to thank you for that. Could you tell the listeners again what you do and where they can find you if they want to connect with you?
Thanks. So, yeah, I help overwhelm and burnt out women and femmes um, really prioritize themselves and their self care um, so they can have the relationships, the careers, the energy that they want, all kind of within the framework of addressing and dismantling oppressive systems that are impacting us. You can find me on Instagram at Change with Cassandra or my website, cassandrasolano.com.
All right. Thank you, Cassandra. We appreciate your time today. Listeners, I want to thank you for your time and attention, and I will see you next time.